My name is Nick Miller. I'm the Executive Director at the Venture College, which is a program in the College of Innovation and Design at Boise State. We have partnered with Trailhead on this series of discussions and programs that we call Survive to Thrive, in an effort to help our startup community stay in touch, to network and to continue building community in a time when that wasn't possible for a while. Thankfully, we're all transitioning back into the workplace. And this has been something that we've had folks reach out and ask us to continue and just, build on the discussions that we've had. And we're really excited to have our two guests today, Dan DeCloss and Monte Keleher. Dan's with PlexTrac and Monte is with Fitted. And I'm really excited to learn about both these companies. I know just a little bit, but very, very much looking forward to this discussion. Before we jump into it, Tim and I chatted prior to this and just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge just everything that's going on in the world. Obviously, there's a lot of challenges and pain related to the pandemic. Obviously the vigils and protests that have gone on in Boise and throughout the world. And I think as a startup community, I think one of the key elements of a thriving startup community is the ability to listen, to learn, and to progress as a result of that. And I think that Boise, our community as a whole, and our startup community has really been able to demonstrate our capacity for listening and learning and moving forward. And so we just wanted to acknowledge that because I'm sure it's top of mind for many folks. And we think that our startup community has a role to play there as well. So with that, excited to turn it over to TM. We will, if you haven't been part of these, we will have a discussion where TM and I will pose questions to our two guests. Everyone that's on the call, please, if you have questions for us, put them in the chat and we will put those questions to our guests. We'll wrap up right around noon and we'll have details on the next session as well. So with that, I will hand it off to TM.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you for that comment. On the note of listening and learning, that's really what we're here to do today as well. And so let's just jump right into it. So I am TM Rastegar, Executive Director with Trailhead. More than excited to have two early stage and potentially later stage. We'll find out what stage these guys are exactly in. To have two startups from our community here with us today. And let's just jump right into it. How about I start with Dan. Dan, can you give us a brief introduction about yourself and tell us how PlexTrac got started?
Yeah, great. No, and thanks again for having me on, and appreciate taking some time to be able to share kind of our story and some of the stuff that we've been working through. So I'm Dan DeCloss. I'm the founder and CEO of PlexTrac. We are a cybersecurity SaaS platform. And my background is in cybersecurity. I have over 15 years in the industry specifically. I've worn many hats throughout that time frame. I have 2 degrees in computer science, with my master's degree being in computer security. And so throughout my time in the space, I've done a lot of different activities. It's a growing field, and will continue to grow. And so my expertise kind of narrowed down into application security, where I was an ethical hacker for many years, right? Where we were hired to break into websites, extract as much information, or find the vulnerabilities that existed within the websites, and then also did a lot of vulnerability assessment and risk assessments. So where you would try to identify as many gaps in an organization's security posture as possible. And then, also was responsible for being on the defensive side of that. So being the one who was responsible for leading a team and growing an internal program to be the ones that are defending against these types of adversaries. So through my time in the space, recognized a big problem that comes down to just workflow efficiency at its core. But specifically when we talk about security assessments, being able to write those reports and get that risk communicated efficiently and effectively, and being able to collaborate in real time with the people that are supposed to be fixing it is vital, right? And it's broken in the cybersecurity world today. So that's the core impact that we make as a product in the space, is making it more efficient for people to get those assessments conducted and written and delivered to the right people, and then allowing the teams that are responsible for fixing those issues to be able to provide updates in real time, giving their stakeholders real-time metrics on their progress. So making it a streamlined experience for the entire, what we call the vulnerability life cycle. Yeah, that's us.
So yeah, I got that. Are there any post-assessment activities that your team conducts with the customer once the assessment is delivered, or is that the time when you then start feeding real-time data to the internal teams?
Yeah, good question. So I mean, so our platform basically is the product that facilitates all of that interactions, right? So we don't actually, we as PlexTrac, allow the ones doing the testing to communicate and collaborate with the ones that are receiving the results. And so then on the post receipt of those, they can then track those results, either integrate with current ticketing systems like, Jira or ServiceNow, but also be able to use it as its own tracking tool, so that you have those real-time metrics on, how quickly are you responding to an event that gets reported? How quickly is it getting resolved? And that really helps drive, and then where are the gaps? So it helps drive decision-making processes on, hey, we're noticing a lot of vulnerabilities popping up in this specific category of, within our organization, so to speak. And so how are we able to make sure that we can put the right resources in the right places to try and prevent those from happening again?
I see. So how big is your team, and how long have you guys been around for?
Yeah, so we have seven people on our team, and then four contracted resources. And we've been, I started the project back in 2016 as a side hustle, right? And bootstrapped it, and then dove in full time. So continued to build the product and gain customers, right? So did a lot of customer validation and those kinds of things early on. Was able to gather about 14 or 15 customers, and so decided to dive in full time in March of 2019, so just a little over a year ago. And then in the late spring of 2019, was introduced to Stage.0 here in Boise, and so we started talking about some seed investment. And it made sense. So we signed a term sheet with Stage.0 last August. And so that's what's really allowed us to really grow. So we have over 52 customers today, a growing pipeline, which is always encouraging. And so, that's kind of where we're at from our current trajectory.
Very cool. Congratulations on that, both on the customer side and your agreement with Stage.0. I'll dive into traction a little bit later and like to glean maybe some more perspective on the Stage.0 experience so far over there at 110 Main. And so it sounds like, based on your background, you were, a quote unquote user operator in the cybersecurity industry. And then through that, you uncovered, let's call them pain points, or this opportunity for streamlining and efficiencies. And so there's actually a parallel. I know a little bit about Monte's story and how Fitted got started. But let me switch gears and give Monte the chance to introduce himself. Tell us a little bit about Fitted and your background.
Yeah, and let me know if you guys can't hear me very well. I don't have the greatest internet here, so. I'm Monte Keleher, co-founder and the rest of the team. I really appreciate it. My background, I've been in, athletic specialty, run specialty retail for the past 15 years. I actually opened up my first running store in San Francisco back in 2010, grew it to 3+ locations. And in that time, I was always noticing and infatuated with the idea of kind of blending the in-store experience and the online experience. And I tried multiple times to launch my own e-com and so forth, whether through Shopify, custom built and whatnot. And for small to medium size companies, it's pretty hard to do it. And there's a reason why, so few retailers in the athletic specialty space, which we can get into later, are online. There's high barriers to entry. That's kind of what is a solution for retailers specific to typically to specialty retail, that is turnkey e-com as well as predictive analytics based on in-store. So, not only do we provide literally a turnkey e-com platform that has built-in catalog, we connect really the first ever to a brand's warehouse inventory combined with an actual brick and mortar's in-store inventory. So the concept of like endless aisle per se. And then using and tracing interactions for consumers when you walk inside of a specialty store. We're able to trace those to the products that you purchase, to just your experience and what you're going to be using it for. And we combine those analytics and use our AI to essentially create predictive retail. So yeah, that's what Fitted is. We started.
Hey Monty, if I could interrupt you for one sec.
Back in, I technically, we started working on this, back in October or November, and then, please go ahead, Jim.
I apologize. I just had a suggestion. Maybe you can turn off the video feed and use some of that capacity for the audio. Every once in a while, you turn into Robot Monty. Sounds kind of cool, but maybe just turn off the. There you go. All right, but I didn't. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah. Hold on one sec, guys.
Yeah, your audio just.
No, not at all. Give me 1 sec, guys.
No problem.
Maybe while we wait for Monty to get his audio figured out, I could throw a question your way, Dan. I think it sounds like a fairly common theme in Boise. The idea of starting something as a side hustle, building it to a place where it can be a full-time job, and then diving all in, as opposed to some areas where capital may be more accessible, that kind of thing. But as you transition from a side hustle towards your full-time job, what were some of those early milestones or signals that you saw that made you think you could get there to full-time job, and then also maybe beyond that made you think, boy, we're in need of some capital?
Yeah, good question. So, being in the cybersecurity space, kind of at a core, I'm in the field of risk management. So I wanted to validate that I actually potentially had something that somebody would buy, right? And my internet is also showing a little instability, but so let me know if I get choppy as well. But so I wanted to build something that I knew I would use. I mean, like that was one of the main reasons. And then, what would somebody else pay me for this, if they wanted to use it? So that was like the first kind of milestone in terms of like, is this just an open source project? Do I open source this, or do I actually, see if I can, make a business out of it? So, just continued to seek feedback. So my first, trigger in my head was, is somebody else willing to pay for this? And then from there, what kind of feedback can I get to grow the product and, tap into more of the market? And so once I felt like, I think my initial thought when I first started was like, oh, once I get 2 or 3 customers, then that's validation enough, and I'll go dive in and just do it. But I took a little longer even at that point. So diving in full time, was okay. I mean, I definitely think that there's something here. I have something. And so the milestone really was more like, I can't keep up anymore, keeping it full-time day job and trying to run a side business, nights and weekends kind of thing. Just, you're just getting burned out. Now you end up in a startup being just that you don't get more time. It's all dedicated just to one thing now. So that was one of the big markers for like, it's time to fish or cut bait. And then, just as even just with it being me and some contracted help, realizing that we do have opportunity to really expand. And so that was where the impetus for seeking capital really came into play, is that we know we can scale faster if we do take some investment. And so those were kind of some of those markers and milestones just internally. Was like, hey, we know we've got a product, we know people are going to pay for it. We now are overwhelmed with feature requests from current customers, and we're getting prospects that are bigger names, and we want to be able to service them. So that really kind of led to, yep, I mean, it makes sense to go get some money.
Dan, if you could give us a sense of your decision to join Stage.0. So at what point in the life cycle, did you make that decision, life cycle of the venture, that is? Did you make that decision? What are you hoping to get from that? And just give us an overall sense of, their reverse engineered approach to the A round.
Oh, yeah, good question. So I didn't really go seeking money, which was kind of nice. I mean, I was introduced to Stage.0 just as I was starting to think about raising capital. And so it was almost, I mean, it was a serendipitous introduction. And so really just started talking through with them and realizing like, yeah, this could make a lot of sense. So basically their model is to say like, hey, their mission is to get us to the Series A with as high evaluation as possible, right? And so being able to kind of work our way back from like, what does our total market look like? What kind of revenue would we want to have at certain milestones along the way, and just trace back like, how much money would we need? And that's where it kind of came down like, yeah, to make this work, we don't want to go get like $250,000. Like we want a significant amount of capital to be able to escalate that trajectory. So that's what kind of made sense, right? And didn't really even pursue other opportunities at that point. Came to a good relationship with Stage.0 and thoroughly enjoying it.
So what does the relationship entail? Maybe for some of us on the outside who know about Stage.0, have read up on their website, but aren't too familiar with it. In as much information as you can share, obviously, but I understand that there is a cash event, and then there's also a tech team that they can bring to the table if the startup indeed needs a fractional CTO or some horsepower on the product development side. Tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah. So they have a core team that really helps on the operational side, on the business planning, modeling, those kinds of things, which are very helpful. And so they're a true partner in the business, and then they do, and this is also another reason that I wanted to seek the right investment, right? is people that can open your network and connections, right? So not only from potential customers, but also things that you need, like marketing advice, engineering talent that you may not be able to hire right away in the Boise area. So they don't have their own set of tech talent. They have connections to contractors and outsourced resources that we can tap into. And that's what we ended up doing. So we got introduced to this group, and we vetted them ourselves. It was not any kind of obligation or anything like that. But have been very impressed with them, and they've also been a good tech partner in helping expand our engineering capabilities. So really they just open up a lot of doors, right, and bring a lot of professional help to the table that we may have otherwise struggled for some time to find.
Great, thank you. We have one question from the audience, and before we jump into that, I guess just a quick reminder that if you do have questions, please post them in the chat. And then also just wanted to see if Monte was able to call back in. Monte, are you on the line?
Yeah, I'm back, guys. Sorry about that.
Oh, great. Perfect. I thought that might be you hiding down there behind the phone number. Yeah. Great. Well, I think this question that was from the audience, I know it was posed to Dan, but Monte, feel free to jump in as well. The question is, has investment crowdfunding been considered for any round to do just what Dan referred to: market validation, customer acquisition, additional investors, et cetera? Any perspective on crowdfunding from either one of you?
I can go first.
Go ahead.
It was not something that I considered, primarily because of such a niche space that we're in. I wouldn't even say that it really crossed my mind, just to not, in terms of like not necessarily knowing, what to even ask for. I think, that's one thing is in such an early stage, it's even hard to know, like, well, how much money should I be, trying to raise, and do I want to put some, you got to always be careful about putting any kind of valuation on your company, early on. So it wasn't something that crossed my mind. And for a B2B product like ours, I wouldn't have. I guess it really didn't make a whole lot of sense for us. But maybe I'll definitely see what Monte has to say.
Yeah, I agree just about in whole with Dan there. It came up at times, when you're looking for money. We were in a little bit different point where Dan was, in terms of, we were okay. If we want to go where we know we can go, we're going to need some capital. It can't just be us founders, funding it. But the crowdsource funding, like what Dan says, we were always looking for investors that either have a tie to some type of tie in to what we're doing. And if you're doing a B2B product, like both of us were doing, I don't think it made as much sense. But I also can't speak to the crowdsource funding, because I just didn't do as much resource. I didn't want to go down that route because I wanted more strategic partners from an investment standpoint.
Monte, on that note, can you share with us, there's some recent news around Fitted and raising capital. Is that something you can share with us and our audience?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we are excited. We actually, we opened it up, not opened it up, but last night we got our last kind of piece, and we were looking to raise $1 million. We ended up oversubscribing. We're closing it out tomorrow at 1.2, a little over 1.2, which is exciting for us. Our kind of lead investor, we're extremely excited in terms of a partnership. It's Handshake Ventures. Anyways, it's Bill Elmore. who is the founder of Foundation Capital, one of the earliest and largest investors in the companies such as, the Netflix, Uber, Chegg, and others. So we think he's going to be an extremely valuable partner and on our board. So yes, that's the update for us. We're just closing it actually tomorrow.
Huge strategic milestone. Congratulations. Out of curiosity, did you move to Boise? Help with that? Were you able to find some of those strategic relationships here locally?
Yeah, so our two largest investors are in the Bay Area. So we were founded in the Bay Area, San Francisco essentially. Then when we wanted to raise money, we decided that, coupled with obviously family, I've got young family, so I wanted to raise the kids out somewhere else. Anyways, so we decided on Boise because it's up and coming. We felt it had really good kind of hidden technical resources in terms of talent, as it has shown us immensely, which we're very, very pleased with. So when we got here, we definitely wanted local money, and I'd say it's probably 25% here based in Idaho, and the remainder is essentially Silicon Valley funding because of our roots, I would assume. But we moved here officially in December, and we plan on, when we do a Series A, we really want to push for kind of local Idaho funding if we can, though we know that, obviously Bill and his team will want to be a part of that, but we're trying to go local.
Well, that's music to my ears. Just trying to stay local. You're oversubscribed, which is probably a good problem to have, especially in this environment. Is your business?
Yeah.
Have you experienced a drop in demand, an increase in demand? How has the pandemic impacted Fitted so far?
Yeah, and I'll be very transparent. We were looking to raise. We started back in January. We had similar to what Dan, when he started, when he got to that point, we had about 15 national retail partners. We were being very strategic, and the funding was like, okay, we see what you guys are trying to do, but we were talking to everyone, but not everyone was committing. And I don't know if Dan or others have felt this. No one wants to be the first in, but man, once you get going, it can be a waterfall because no one wants to miss out. It's kind of ironic, but so we had some early commitments, but nothing in the bank. And then COVID hit, and as you can imagine, we're a turnkey e-com, and at the time, less than 5% of all the athletic specialty retailers in this country actually had an actual e-com presence. I mean, think about that. That's wild, right? And so we went from, 15, 16 national partners to in 6 weeks, 80, national, 170 different, locations across the country. We're using Fitted, and so it kind of went madness, and we buckled down. The mindset that we actually took is, here's the pandemic, money's going to lock up. No one wants to, in terms of investors, no one's going to want to spend money. So we just said, we have to make it work. We're going to have to, founders are going to have to put in whatever we have left and just go to the wall and actually become cash flow positive. That was literally how we planned it. And I checked back in on some of our investors and updated them on our progress about halfway through the pandemic, we'll call it. And because of our we were, instead of being 18 months out from cash flow positive because of the pandemic, I hate to say because of the pandemic, but all of a sudden we were, 4 months away of being cash flow positive, 3 months away, And so that's all of a sudden where investors really started jumping in, which was wild. So I don't know if that answers your question, but the pandemic definitely, because stores were closed, they needed our solution to bring them quickly online, and we could get someone up and live running with a fully built out catalog. Basically, they don't have to build in anything, including products. They have endless inventory. They don't even need to be able to access their store inventory, and we could turn them on and start doing sales within 2 days. So that was kind of catching magic in a bottle, per se.
Yeah, that answers my question. And also, it sounds like your value proposition to these businesses is immense, especially during this time. I can just imagine specialty running stores going to, zero demand and walk-ins all of a sudden, and, Fitted coming along. I just think that's a really cool story. Are there any, just curious, Boise-based customers of yours?
Yeah. We actually just signed Shoes Idaho Running Company.
Very cool.
Yeah. So we're super excited to partner with them. They should be, actually, I think they might have gone live yesterday, but yeah, that was a good one for us.
Keeping it local, I like it. And hey, before I switch to Dan, I wanted to ask you one other thing. Being a startup that moved to Boise from San Francisco, I have a gazillion questions about that. We don't have time for all of those, but I understand your team is somewhat fractionally still spread between the Bay Area and here. And has this recent uptick in demand and you closing that round, has that changed any of that? Are you guys looking to move the whole team to Boise, more people to Boise? What's sort of the location-based approach for Fitted now?
Yeah. I've always been, I've got my retail stores and some other things, but so I'm a big fan of in-person culture, right? I think you're a lot more productive most of the time. Again, I'm not an engineer. I probably actually bother the engineers, but don't help them get work done. But I'm a big fan of being in person and being in proximity and having that kind of family feel no matter what kind of business you are. And so it was important when I was moving out here that my two other co-founders and some of my senior engineers were going to move out here eventually. That timeline got moved up very quickly, and it wasn't even the funding necessarily. It was the, oh my gosh, we need to triple our business in 4 weeks, right? That was like, wow, we need to be talking, we need to be closer, and they said, okay, this thing is for real, and they moved out here. So we have 8 full-timers now living full-time in Boise, and then 4 that are, 3 in San Francisco and actually 1 in Virginia. But they are all now, because the funding, they should all be here in the next 6 to 18 months, depending upon who. So it definitely changed things, but I think it was a blend of funding, but also just, not saying belief in the product, but like, oh wow, this is a career for these guys. Obviously I believed in it, but I think it was once everyone else saw the demand and how it could change a brick and mortar's business, then I think that inspired them to go all in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense. That's great. That's Fitted is enriching our startup ecosystem. So we're so excited to have you guys here, and we're excited to bring more of you to Boise. On the note of, the pandemic and impacts on demand, Dan, if I can go back to you, B2B business, cybersecurity. I'm not an engineer, I'm not in cybersecurity, but if I just look at the macro metrics, more people online, more people having time on their hand to potentially do nefarious things. Has that impacted your business at all?
I would say, like our customers are the ones that are, we have both internal and external teams that are doing security assessments, right? So whether you're within an enterprise team or a consulting type firm that's being contracted to do this. So we've definitely seen kind of a variance on it affecting some of our customers in terms of, how many, if remote assessments are fine, people are going to be able to do those. Some people may start to restrict their budgets on paying for those up front. the on-site and the physical assessments definitely were, impacted for several of our customers. And in terms of the uptick, there's definitely an uptick in just cyber attacks, in general, right, throughout these last several months, which is always going to pay, people caution. And so, we definitely have felt, just more, what I would say apprehension, in terms of like, where are things going to go next. But I would say definitely even within the last month and a half, last month, let's say, even just for us, we've seen an uptick just in things feeling opening back up, getting more demo requests, getting more interest in our product and those kinds of things. So, we adjusted some of our marketing strategies as well, through this time period, which obviously helped.
Yeah, I can imagine lots of remote sales calls.
Yeah. And we're largely remote anyways, but like, we can't go to conferences anymore, right? So how are we going to continue to try and get our name out there and those kinds of things? How do we tap into our customer and our ideal buyer? All those fun things to tackle in general, right?
Yeah. So back to you being, an operator user who uncovered pain points and then later on decided to go solve it. Monte's story, very similar. Brick and mortar store, running shoe store. You're probably unhappy with the e-commerce side of things. So you went ahead and decided to build the solution yourself. Monte, like Dan did, tell us a little bit about that transition. At what point did you decide to kind of close shop and start the e-commerce business, or was there any kind of overlap in that transition?
Yeah. There's still, I still technically own the brick and mortar stores just from afar. My team runs it, and I always say I just pay the bills and cry. They actually operate the thing, but there definitely was overlap, and I actually think it was extremely beneficial to not only as Dan will say, if you get to experience the problem, experience the entire industry, so what solutions exist, if any, the problems, and then your customers because you were a customer, essentially. It was extremely valuable, and the reason why I didn't necessarily just sell the shops or go completely 100% until about a year ago to Fitted was because I really wanted to fully understand, and still maintain relationships with both brands and other retailers. But I still can relate so much that it doesn't feel like I'm on the other side 100%, if that makes sense. My work is 100% on Fitted, but I'll always be part retailer at heart. Which doesn't always help with pricing breaks or forgiveness or blah blah. But I think Dan could speak to this too. I think there's a lot of empathy, and I think what is going to help make businesses great is when you've been there, you've done that, and you can empathize with both the good, the bad, and kind of really understand the customer, because essentially at heart you are one. If that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. About that customer discovery process, Dan, you mentioned you spend a lot of time up front trying to understand your customer, validating the market. Tell us a little bit about, Nick brought up that you joined, it was Idea Set Go at Trailhead early on, but sort of take us through the early days of your customer validation process. With a B2B product that is SaaS-based, software-based, how do you go about prototyping and then getting user feedback and validating? It just seems like such a big task to get to.
Yeah. And I think if you were to look back, if you were to say in 5 years, that does feel daunting. But really, I think, because it started where I had this pain point and this problem, and so I knew that I would be a customer of my own product. That helped at least kind of shape the initial feature set, so to speak. And so, within the cybersecurity space, it's kind of a small world, and like, because I've been in the field for 15 years, I just reached out to my own network of friends and past colleagues, and just said, hey, does this make sense? Is this something that you would buy? And can I show you what I'm doing? And do you have any feedback and those kinds of things? So that was always good, early on. And then, and in some of those other things, just standing up a website, right? And seeing if people, seeing if you can drive traffic to, book a demo, or even, try to buy online, even if you're not offering it, to be sold, like seeing how far they click through in that process, right? Those are all just interesting data points to be gathering. And those are things you can do without having a product, right? And so, the Trailhead experience was very good for me, because I'm a cybersecurity person. While I like engineering, I like, entrepreneurship, and I like the idea of running my own business and those kinds of things, it didn't have as much experience on just, growing and what to be thinking about early on. And so the programs that I went through early on at Trailhead really helped kind of shape the mindset of what I should be thinking about, right? And I had some experience just with small business entrepreneurship, but when you're talking about a B2B large, want to grow a large company, it's just there are certainly things that I wouldn't have thought of early on. So that was very helpful.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm fascinated with the fact that so Dan, you came at this as a technical founder, if you will. Monte, I believe, came at this more as a business founder. And so did you in your early days supplement the other side, other than participating in the Trailhead program? Did you bring someone on board that had more of the business mind that could sort of match and help scale the business from that sense? Or did you do that on your own? Dan, that question was for you.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I'm sorry, could you repeat it again, the validation of the business?
No, what I was talking about is the fact that, so you came at the business as a technical founder, as an engineer. Right. Monte came at it much as a retailer. He said, I'm a retailer at heart forever. He's a business person. And so I'm wondering, understanding that you went through Idea Set Go and it gave you sort of more of the entrepreneurship methods and tools to scale your business. Did you team up with someone early on to bring that knowledge into your team, or did you do that on your own?
Not early on. I mean, I definitely, surrounded myself with mentors, right? And just, would take people to coffee and to lunch and just kind of share what was going on, what my thought process was, where we were at, and so, just continue to tap into the resources that I'd been introduced to, right, through the community, and things like that. But didn't really bring anybody on until after we had actually taken investment. So, I'd contracted, engineering stuff out, but didn't have a co-founder per se to kind of help with that. And mainly it's like just didn't have somebody that I, really didn't have a person to do that, I think also some of that is more, in my thought process, like, well, do I have something that I want to have somebody else take this big of a risk as well? I can handle myself, but I don't want to screw somebody else's life up, so to speak.
Start with your own before you go to other people's lives, right?
Right. Yeah.
And Monte, same coin, different side. So you approached the problem set in that industry as a business founder, and did you? I hear e-commerce, back-end analytics, and I scream for help. Did you get help early on to sort of wrap your head around the technical side? It sounds like you dabbled in e-commerce yourself already.
Well, I dabbled in the business side of things. I think you nailed it. I'm more kind of the business, the person. I got a lot of passion and I wouldn't even call it vision, but I'm saying I dream real big, right? And say, why can't we do this? And then engineers say, because that's impossible, you dumb, or because that's going to cost millions, that kind of thing, right? And so what I did, absolutely. I mean, as you guys saw today, I can't even work a computer, right? So, and here we are building a SaaS platform. So, I immediately found, and he was one of my friends. Actually, he's a group runner of mine at my store for 10 years. And he had just retired. He was a long time, you know, tech exec throughout the Bay Area. And I approached him with this kind of concept and took about a year to convince him it was, you know, doable and that there was a market. But no, I surrounded, both my co-founders are completely on the technical side, engineers at heart, you know, yeah, they handle all that. They know exactly who to hire, how to scale kind of from a tech standpoint. While I was the business development side, I can go get the customers. I knew our spending and the budgeting and all that kind of stuff. You know, I knew how to run a business and to grow it, but not a SaaS company necessarily. And my two co-founders are extremely on the tech side. You know, I had started a Runner's Mind solo, and it's a very hard, as Dan is experiences. I mean, it is tough, and a lot of it is like, oh man, I can take this risk myself. I could wreck my finances, blah blah. You know, and so you want to take that, but for something that I saw extremely large opportunity and a huge game changer that I think it is, you know, I needed help, and I actually wanted business partners because I had done it solo the first time, and it wasn't. Again, I knew I needed help, so I have two co-founders that are on the tech side, complete opposite of me.
Thank you for that. I had another question, but we have one from the audience. Dan, let me start with you for this question here. Question is, what was the strategy that went into determining pricing for your platforms? Did you let initial customers drive that strategy? Did you aim higher and go for larger enterprise customers? So give us a sense of the metrics that you use to come up with your price points.
Yeah, the first customer was whatever they were willing to pay. so that set the initial baseline, right? Okay, these people were willing to pay XYZ dollars. And fortunately for me, I mean, it was a colleague, a former colleague that I had worked with in the past, and so you know he was trying to be as reasonable of like, this is truly what I think the value is that we're getting for this today, seeing the prospect and those kinds of things, and so that really helped, you know, kind of start to shape the initial pricing structure. I think like any true startup, we're always adjusting pricing, we're always trying to increase our average contract value and our ASP, average sale price. And so as we've expanded into larger enterprises, you know, that also helps shift the pricing as well. We've definitely had people say, you're not charging enough. I mean, just flat out, which is like, well, we can add another zero to the quote if you're okay with that, you know. But you know, so those are the things that we continue to learn and grow as an early stage startup, right? Is like, what is the market value for what we're offering, and what will people, you know, if we were to fully bake, like, this is what we really think somebody would pay for it. And that helps set our forecasting and helps shape the conversations as we go into the next quotes, right? Into the next round of prospects. So it's evolving. It always is. You're always adjusting things. But yeah, early on it was just trying to see like what will somebody pay for it, right? And you know, what else would they want to see to pay more, kind of a thing.
Yeah, so you bring up a couple interesting points. So pricing fluctuations in an early stage of a startup is actually fairly common, and it surprises a lot of people that that's okay. I think the other thing that's of interest to me you bring up is the cost plus versus the value-based approach when you come up with your pricing. In other words, understanding what value, monetized or not, your customer's getting from buying this from you, and then pricing it that way. Monte, did you use a cost plus? Did you use a value-based approach? Tell us a little bit on how Fitted comes up with this pricing model.
Besides throwing a dart at the board, let's see here. Yeah, I mean, I love what I need to hang out with Dan because he makes me feel so much better because that was exactly our experience. You know, I was my first customer. Obviously, I didn't pay I'll be honest with you. But the great thing about me owning the stores is that I could say, okay, I think I'm like, 1,000 stores across the country. Here's my finances. Here's what I would be able to afford. And here's what I would be willing to pay for the value, right? So I kind of used the blend of what you're saying. This is the value that I'm getting for, fitted platform. And then here's what that cost would equate to. And then the ultimate question is, okay, something can make as much sense, kind of what, Dan was saying. Yeah, you can go to someone and say, this is easily worth $1,000, right? And I'll show you why. And you can do that all day long, but at the end of the day, it's about what they're willing to pay. We have changed our pricing twice in the past actual, couple months, which was really fun for us because we were essentially, what we realized is we were getting too little from the big guys. They said exactly what Dan mentioned. You guys are doing this too cheap. And then some of the little guys were saying, yeah, it's just a little too expensive, or, oh, I don't know, right? So we actually did the whole lower the base fee, increase a percentage of platform sales or, activity, which has changed the game, and I highly recommend, if you have the ability to, try to get revenue in 2 different ways, because that has been a complete game changer for us, so that, if a few of your partners are smaller, you might not get as much, but the better they do, then the better you do, then it becomes fair to everyone in their mindset, right? So if there was a way to, and I don't know if Dan can do that on the side, he'll have to speak to it, but for us, it was like, look, the better you do, technically the more that fit it's going to make, but it's so small, it's incremental that it's, the customer doesn't think about that because they're winning too, right? Rather than just a flat fee. And if they do poor, they're just losing anyways, right? So I don't know if that answers the question, but
yeah, no,
Dan makes me feel better.
It sounds like Fitted's compensation is tied to ultimately the performance of your platform, which is, for a customer, that's an easy thing to agree to, I think, because, at the end of the day, if you don't perform, it probably wouldn't cost them anything. Dan,
not much, right?
If not much, right? There's still a base price. Any comments on that approach, Dan? The base price getting 2 revenue streams versus 1?
Yeah, I mean, and then for us, we've shifted already to kind of a tiered pricing model, right? Where we can appeal to those, we're in exactly the same boat. We've got the small shops that, oh man, that sounds a little steep for us. But then the enterprise customers that are like, where is that other zero? And that's also can be a problem because then they may not feel like, you're actually providing the value that you say you are, right? It's like, no, I don't understand. It's not they can't connect the dots of like, how can you say you're going to do all of this, but not be charging enough to cover, in their minds, what we should be. So all, those approaches are some of the challenges that you face as an early stage company. And that's okay. That's what you're supposed to be doing at this stage, is really just to continue to flesh that out. I think and I love the idea of like, as they grow, you grow as well. I can't say that we have the exact same model, but there are certainly some parallels that we could draw as well.
Very cool. Yeah. Heavy relationship-based sales cycles, and it makes sense to tie performance to compensation. At least it checks off my box when I hear that. With that, I did have one more question, but we're about out of time. If you could, Dan and Monty, just highlight real quick, give us an appreciation for like the next major milestones for PlexTrac and then for Fitted. What's ahead? What do you hope to achieve in 2020? And then we can wrap up this discussion.
I can go ahead, Monty.
Yeah, I think our major milestone is, office space is an exciting thing for us, but in terms of a business, we are very excited to scale into our next vertical. It's about 15 months earlier than we thought, but we're currently, just to kind of give an idea, we're currently been focusing on run specialty industry, but we recently had the kind of open door and the help from one of our major brands to scale into an industry, you know, that we've always looked at, but it's 7X, you know, the run industry, for example. And so that's going to be a big milestone for Fitted, is to say, yeah, this is not just a run specialty. This is an athletic specialty, which is obviously a much larger TAM.
Yeah, that's exciting. If you're able to scale into other verticals, you know, that's awesome. That's great to hear. Dan, how about give us a sense of what's ahead and what you hope to achieve for the rest of this year.
Yeah, so I mean, I actually very similar boat. You know, is expanding our market opportunity. You know, right now we kind of narrowly focus on penetration testing teams, but there's a lot bigger market segment within other security teams within the global security enterprise program, and so we have some exciting features that we've been working on, and just, you know, growing our revenue to be able to tackle, you know, those types of things. So, you know, for 2020, that's definitely what we're focused on as well, is growing into the additional segments in the market that continue to build the TAM, you know, and obviously help, you know, our revenue and just brand awareness, right? So, you know, we're definitely poised to become a fun, large enterprise platform that, you know, that's really what we are growing into, and so. Those are the things that we're really working hard and fast for in 2020.
Music to my ears. Two hot startups on the cusp of scaling into other market verticals. I'm excited, very, very excited. With that, we're out of time, a minute over. Nick, can I turn it back to you to wrap us up and take us home?
Sure. Yeah, thank you, Dan and Monte. Appreciate you telling the story of your startups and you know, sharing with us kind of the insights into closing around and what that means for you and your companies. And I think I would add, you know, what it means for the ecosystem here, and the strength of Boise in general, obviously coming out of this pandemic, hopefully stronger for it. And yeah, congratulations on your success, and we'll be watching you closely and hope to see more of that. You know, one piece I would just add, Kara dropped into the chat a registration for next week. We'll be back on Tuesdays next week at 11 a.m. With resilience in the food industry, talking to a couple of food startups in Boise and maybe one up north. But yeah, thank you to Dan and Monte with PlexTrac and Fitted respectively. We appreciate your time, and look forward to seeing you all again soon.
Thank you all. Appreciate
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Trailhead.
You got it.
Really appreciate it.
Bye.
Take care.